Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling drained, frustrated, or strangely defeated, even though you said all the right things? Here's a hard truth most people never realize. The moment you feel the need to explain yourself, you've already lost control. Not because you were wrong, but because you entered a battle that was never meant to be won. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in history, wrote something that still unsettles people today. You have power over your mind, not outside events. But what most people miss is this. True power is often invisible. It doesn't shout. It doesn't argue. And it certainly doesn't need to prove itself. When we're young, we're taught that intelligence means having the right words at the right time. We believe that staying silent makes us look weak, uncertain, or afraid. So we explain, we defend, we react. But the Stoics understood something far deeper. Real strength isn't about winning every argument. It's about knowing which battles drain your spirit and which questions are designed to steal your peace. Because not every question is asked in good faith. Some are traps. Some are invitations to doubt yourself, and some exist for only one reason, to pull you out of your center. This is where Stoic wisdom draws a hard line. Silence, when chosen deliberately, is not avoidance. It is self-mastery. There are moments when answering costs you far more than staying quiet ever could. Moments where a single sentence can give away your calm, your dignity, your inner freedom. The Stoics didn't fear silence, they respected it. Because they knew this. When you stop reacting to every provocation, you stop handing other people the keys to your emotional state. And that's the kind of power no one can take from you. We'll uncover why the wisest people throughout history often chose silence. Not because they had nothing to say, but because they understood what silence protects. Question 1. Why do you look so nervous? There's a question that sounds harmless on the surface, but quietly undermines your confidence the moment you answer it. It goes like this. Why do you look so nervous? Or sometimes, are you okay? You seem tense. I still remember the first time it happened to me. Years ago, just before a public meeting, a colleague smiled and asked that exact question. Without thinking, I replied, "I'm fine. I just didn't sleep well." One sentence. That's all it took. From that moment on, the energy in the room shifted. People looked at me differently. More closely, more critically, as if I had just confirmed something was wrong. Not because it was true, but because I accepted the frame of the question. This is the trap. When someone asks why you're nervous, they're not always concerned. Often, they're testing you. The moment you explain yourself, you silently agree that your emotional state is up for debate. Epictetus warned us about this centuries ago. It is not what happens to you that disturbs you, but your judgment about it. The manipulator's goal is simple, to provoke a reaction. Because once you react, they're no longer responding to you. You're responding to them. The Stoic response isn't clever. It's calm. I'm fine. Then you return to the topic at hand. No explanations, no defense, no performance of calmness. Because here's the truth most people never learn. You don't owe anyone proof of your inner state. Silence, when guided by self-control, becomes a shield. It denies others the power to label you, define you, or destabilize you. You don't win by convincing people you're calm. You win by refusing to let them decide how you feel. And that quiet refusal, steady, grounded, unreactive, is one of the most elegant forms of strength there is. Question 2. Don't you trust me? This question shows up everywhere. In romantic relationships, in friendships, in the workplace, and almost always it appears right after you set a boundary. You ask for clarification. You slow things down. You say you want to be careful. And then comes the line, "Don't you trust me?" At first it hits like a punch of guilt. You feel cold, suspicious, even disloyal. You start questioning yourself instead of the situation. But here's the truth most people never stop to see. This question is rarely about trust. It's about control. The moment you feel pressured to prove your trust, the balance of power has already shifted. Seneca understood this clearly. He wrote that wisdom begins when we learn to distinguish what deserves trust and what requires observation. A wise person doesn't trust blindly. They trust and they verify. I learned this lesson the hard way. Years ago, A friend asked to borrow a large sum of money. When I hesitated, he looked straight at me and said, "Don't you trust me?" Instead of backing down, I paused and replied calmly, "I do trust you, and I also trust reality. Let's put it in writing." He laughed at first, but something unexpected happened after that, because true trust doesn't fear transparency. It welcomes clarity. It stands firm under verification. This is where many people get confused. Being cautious does not mean being suspicious. Setting boundaries does not mean lacking faith. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that a person should stand upright on their own, not be held upright by others. Anyone who demands blind trust is not protecting the relationship. They're protecting their leverage. A trustworthy person never corners you with guilt. They respect your need for clarity because they respect the truth. And the Stoic remembers this. Trust that needs pressure is not trust at all. It's a test. And you don't have to fail it to keep the peace. Question 3. What are you hiding? This question doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't sound aggressive, but it cuts deeper than most. Sometimes it's phrased more gently. Why are you being so quiet? You've been distant lately. It usually appears when you choose silence, when you stop explaining, when you're simply trying to keep the peace. And that's exactly why it's dangerous. When I was younger, I fell for this trap every time. I would rush to defend myself. I'd say, "I'm not hiding anything," and then list reasons, details, justifications. But it never worked. Because explanations don't satisfy people who aren't looking for truth. They satisfy people who are looking for leverage. Seneca said it plainly, "He who seeks wisdom does not waste time justifying himself to fools." The moment you answer this question, you accept a role you were never meant to play, the role of the accused, even when you've done nothing wrong. That's the real intention behind it. This question isn't about understanding you. It's about pushing past your inner walls, forcing access to thoughts, emotions, or boundaries you've chosen to keep private. But here's the Stoic truth most people forget. Privacy is not guilt. Privacy is dignity. You are allowed to have an inner life that not everyone can enter. You are allowed to be quiet without explanation. When I finally understood this, my response changed. Instead of defending myself, I calmly asked, "Why do you think I'm hiding something?" And almost every time, something interesting happened. The other person hesitated. They shifted. They changed the subject, because the goal was never to know. The goal was to dominate. If someone repeatedly questions your silence or accuses you without cause, pause and reflect. Very often, the unease they sense in you is actually their own discomfort with not being in control. And the Stoic remembers, you don't protect your peace by explaining it away. You protect it by knowing when silence speaks loudest. A pause and reflect. Do you think you're better than everyone else? This question usually doesn't appear when you're loud. It appears when you become quiet, when you stop gossiping, when you stop reacting, when you stop arguing just to be right. That's when someone smirks and says, "Oh, so you think you're better than everyone else now?" At first it stings, because it's designed to. The trap is subtle but powerful. It pressures you to apologize for your growth, to shrink yourself back into the version of you that made others comfortable. I remember sitting at a dinner with old friends. They were mocking someone who wasn't there, laughing, piling on. I stayed silent. After a moment, one of them looked at me and said, "What's wrong? You too good for this now?" For years I would have rushed to explain, No, I'm not better than anyone." But in that moment, something became clear. My silence wasn't arrogance. It was peace. Epictetus taught that humility is necessary for growth, but humility is not submission. It doesn't mean betraying your values just to blend in. When you change, not everyone will celebrate it. Some people don't feel judged by your words. They feel judged by your example. And that's why this question exists. The Stoic response doesn't attack. It doesn't defend. It simply states the truth. I'm not better than anyone. I'm just choosing what feels right for me. I respect your path. Please respect mine. That's it. No debate. No justification. Because the crowd often mocks what it doesn't understand, and inner peace to restless minds can look a lot like pride. But the Stoic knows better. You're not rising above others to look down on them. You're rising above chaos to protect your peace. And anyone who tries to pull you back down is usually afraid to rise themselves. Question 5. You won't get offended if I tell you the truth, right? This question is always wrapped in politeness. It sounds respectful, almost considerate, but make no mistake, it's often a warning, not a courtesy. You won't get offended if I tell you the truth, right? When I was younger, I used to smile and say, of course, go ahead. Every time I regretted it. Because that permission became a weapon, not to clarify, not to help, but to wound, while claiming honesty as an excuse. Epictetus gave us a powerful rule for inner freedom. If you want to be invincible, do not enter battles that do not concern you. This question is a test, not of your openness, but of your tolerance. It measures how much disrespect you're willing to accept in the name of being mature or honest. I remember a coworker once saying, "You won't get offended if I tell you what people say about you behind your back, right?" I paused, and instead of agreeing, I replied calmly, "If it doesn't serve peace, I don't need to hear it." The room went quiet. Because not every truth deserves your attention, and not everyone who claims honesty speaks with integrity. A truly honest person doesn't need disclaimers. They speak with care. They speak with purpose. They don't ask for permission to cross a line. They simply refuse to cross it. So when someone asks if you'll be offended, remember this. They already know what they're about to say is harmful. And the Stoic response is simple. Does it bring peace? If you think it might offend me, maybe it's not worth saying. You're not avoiding truth. You're protecting your inner order. Because strength isn't about hearing everything. It's about choosing wisely what you allow into your mind. And sometimes the most powerful response is a calm refusal to listen. End of quote. The wisdom of not answering. Marcus Aurelius once wrote a line so simple, yet so difficult to live by. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. Most people misunderstand this. They think strength means responding, correcting, defending, having the last word. But Stoicism teaches something far more demanding. Silence, when chosen wisely, is not fear. It is not weakness. It is self-command. The world will always present you with games, loaded questions, subtle provocations, emotional traps, designed to pull you out of yourself. And here's the truth that changes everything. You are not obligated to play every game you're invited to. Wisdom is not about knowing every answer. It's about recognizing which questions are unworthy of your energy. Every time you choose silence instead of reaction, something shifts. You become a little freer, a little steadier, a little harder to manipulate. Because when you stop reacting on impulse, you stop handing others control over your inner world. Seneca reminded us that life, like conversation, is not measured by length, but by quality. Not how long it lasts, but how much peace it leaves behind. Some conversations don't deserve an answer. Some questions don't deserve your mind. And some silences speak louder than any argument ever could. The wise understand this, because in the end, the silence of the composed is worth more than all the noise of the restless. And when you learn to walk away without resentment, without explanation, without regret, you don't lose, you rise. You don't lose. If this message resonated with you, take a quiet moment and let it sink in. Then give this video a like. It helps this wisdom reach people who need it. If you value calm over chaos, clarity over noise, and strength that doesn't need to shout, consider subscribing to the channel. Here we explore Stoic wisdom not as philosophy, but as a way to live with more peace, control, and dignity in a world that constantly tries to provoke you. Now, I'd like to hear from you. Which of these questions have you encountered most in your own life? Or what's a question you've learned is better left unanswered? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. Until next time, protect your peace. And remember, sometimes the strongest response is silence.